Hey guys, welcome back to Previa Lines Podcast. This is Sarah
and Whitney.
Okay, so we are talking in our NICU series, and we have a special guest today. Our Previa Alliance moms will know her, but for our podcast listeners, you will meet her. Her name is Jody O'Brien, and she is the NICU guru social worker for March of Dimes and where we're at in Alabama. But she's also a personal friend of ours and excited a mama. So excited to share with you. Welcome, Jody.
Hi, Yay. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to chat. So give our listeners a little synopsis about you and what you do.
Okay. So I am the NICU Family Support Coordinator for one of the largest NICUs here in Alabama. And I work for the March of Dimes. And so the program that I'm involved in is a program March of Dimes created. There are over 70 of us across the United States that do this program for NICU families. And it's just a way to educate families and staff in NICUs, and then also just provide support and kind of help families navigate their journey in the NICU.
Yeah.
And so it's a really cool opportunity to get to be a part of that journey and help them to work in and out of how to navigate it. It can be overwhelming. And so I am the only NICU Family Support Coordinator in Alabama, but I would love to see a lot more of us one day, because I think that it is needed in a lot of our NICUs. And I think the NICU that I work in is a little bit unique in that it is private rooms for each family.
That's wonderful.
Which, is incredible. And that is not the norm for most of the NICUs in the state.
I was about to say that wasn't how it was at the hospitals that I've worked
or
at.
Even in the country. There's really not that many. That has
there's two hospitals in Birmingham that do that, but
I think that there is now,
because usually it's like big open rooms and kind of like their little bassinets all next to each other with their little incubator. I call them incubators. It's probably not an incubator, but you know those little things.
Yes.
Yeah, isolate.
Yeah. It's okay. So and I know that NICU, because both my boys were in there. So Will 10 days, James just overnight. But that room, personal room,
big deal.
Yeah,
big deal.
But just like everything, it had its pros and cons.
Exactly.
My first hospital that I worked in, the NICU, it was an open bay NICU. And so I was able to kind of compare. I worked there for 6 years before I went to this hospital, and I see the pros and cons because of just like what we'll talk about, finding your community.
Yeah.
The private rooms give you that privacy and just allows you to be there with your baby longer.
Right.
As opposed to the open bay NICU where there was usually visitation hours. That's not the case when it's a private room situation. But when it's a big open bay, I mean, you are automatically put in a community with other parents because you're all in there together. You can see each other face to face. Whether you mean to or not, you can hear what's going on with their babies.
100%.
You know? And so that was positives, but then there were also negatives. There would be parents that had babies that were maybe just there for something not as significant, but then they're seeing the trauma of a family that's about to lose their baby. Right. And so those were kind of hard things to navigate. Yeah. I think that's the positive you get with the individual rooms. But at the same time, I mean, it's like an ICU where one side of the room is just a glass door.
Yeah.
So you can still see, and parents have talked a lot about the parent across the hall lost their baby today, and then they have to process that because
and I would assume that as a parent, that would make your own anxiety peak of, could that happen to my baby? Even if my baby came here just for, a temp drop after delivery or something that seems minor.
Right.
It makes those
100%.
intrusive thoughts come in and flood, in addition with postpartum hormones and all of that stuff.
Right. Exactly. And you were talking about your son just being there for a night, but for a night, you can experience some really traumatic things. It can be a very, not scary. Well, I mean, it can be a very scary place or just very intimidating place.
Yeah, 100%. Everything you were saying, it flashed me back to Will, the oldest, was the 10 days. And so he went directly from OR to NICU because he was 34 weeks, rolled in there, I remember, and then looking around, and it was just, they didn't do NICU tours. I didn't know, what a NICU would look like. And I was like, wow, the room was overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
I'm a nurse, but I was like, okay, I know what this is. And then I know what that is, but it's all mini because it's a baby. And then
right.
that's hard to concept. And then, like you said, I was there for 10 days and I looked across the hallway because, I mean, that's what you do. You look around, you know, you have nothing. And I kept seeing this baby constantly like crash. And all the nurses run in and I would see the dad's face. I'll never forget this dad's face because when that would happen, he would stand by the window and I could see his face and I would try not to look, you know, and it was just, I felt, and I couldn't see mom. So I didn't know something was going on with mom medically or something, but I saw him.
Yeah.
And it just, like you said, I was like, oh my gosh, what's if Will does that or like Will's alarm? Because that's the one thing, the alarms.
Yes.
Just
that's a big
you
one.
hear them constantly and Will's would dip, like his oxygen would dip. It wasn't like extreme dips, but I would hear it and then I would just be like, oh my gosh, that's going to be him.
Yeah.
And then I'd go, but all the nurses are over there, but they weren't. But in my head, I was like, what if they don't come?
Yeah. Quick enough.
And then I spiraled.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so common. So a lot of what I do at the hospital is I have classes for parents to just have 30 minutes to an hour to just get out of their room and come have some lunch. And we talk about different topics. It can range from caring for yourself in the NICU or what you expect from your baby and your providers. Like we really try to educate parents on what to expect and then what they can do, because it can feel like there's just nothing that they can do. And that's not true. There's a lot of things that you can do when your baby's in the NICU that is helpful, but it can just, you know, it's hard to see those things sometimes. So being able to get out of the room and have a break from the monitors, I mean, the sounds of the NICU, you don't always notice it when it's happening. A lot of times it's once parents get home and then it's true PTSD.
100%.
A beep, a sound, it will startle you back to that place.
Smell.
Yeah.
The
some
lights.
People can't even sleep without having those noises in the background and they don't understand why. Yeah. And then it's because they're so used to hearing those things that when they're gone, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
They get conditioned to
and
it.
You don't realize how tense your body is in the NICU.
Super tense.
So that's one thing that we try to talk to our parents about is trying to find ways to relax themselves. So we do some like craft classes.
Good.
Things like that where they can get out and do something fun because it just gets them to like drop their shoulders and take a deep breath and just relax for a minute, because when you're in that room it can feel very tense.
Very tense.
Very tense. And so it's overwhelming.
I think even if you know baby's going to be in NICU versus if you don't know and it ends up, it's still, you're going to go through the same battles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So for our listeners who don't have a U in their NICUs, let's break down some things. You're big on finding your community. How can they find their community? If this mom's like, okay, I'm in the NICU right now, how do I find a community? What would you tell her?
Well, I would say this. So one thing I hear a lot from parents is you have your family and your friend, your support system, what you would consider your support system before you come into the hospital. But a lot of times they're not able to be there with you. And so a lot of parents will share that eventually they get to a point where they don't want to call those people because they don't know what to say. They want to be supportive, but I hear moms talk about it just feels like a repetitive conversation. And it's also, they're just trying to be positive, but you're sitting in the thick of it and you don't see any positives.
Right.
So you don't need somebody to tell you, oh, I'm sure they're going to be fine.
When they don't,
just hang in there.
They don't know.
Because they don't know what that really looks like.
No.
And so
the moms and dads really need validation of how hard the NICU is.
Yes.
And validation of their feelings.
And people have a hard time validating that because it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to these support people to be like, how do I comfort this mom with this baby's in the NICU that could die or has this really rare medical condition or whatever. I mean, it's just an uncomfortable conversation.
It is, for sure.
For everybody.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, you have all these people who are like, it's okay, I'm sure they're going to be fine. They're going to pull through. And it reminds me so much of the involuntary gaslighting that you see with grief at like a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Well, aren't you just glad that they're in a better place and things like that? And it's like, we don't necessarily need
It sucks
that.
right now and it hurts.
We just need someone to say, that's really challenging. Can I bring you some food?
Yeah.
Do you need a gas gift card? Do you need a coloring book? Like, what can I bring you?
Right.
Like, you're not getting a choice of saying no. It's what do you want me to bring?
Yeah. Right. That's so true. And so we really encourage our parents to, no one's going to understand it except the people who have been in it.
Correct.
And so finding opportunities where, a lot of hospitals not have classes like we do, but they may have an area where you can get refreshments and maybe some seating. Just sit there for a minute. Just give yourself some time out of the room and connect when parents come in. I think it can feel overwhelming when you're stressed out already and you're away from your family and you don't know anyone and you're just ready to go home. And then you think, I am not going to sit down and chit chat with someone. Like, that's just not what I'm about, right now, because I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed and I don't want to just, have talk. I just want to just talk with somebody. But once they start talking and you realize this mom is going through something very similar that I'm going through, and they start comparing stories, it's like that weight starts to lift because they're, in some ways, they're kind of carrying the burden for each other.
100%.
They're all in it together.
There's some true empathy there.
Absolutely. And so I think it's just important to find those areas maybe in your hospital where people may gather, parents may gather, and just spend a little bit of time to just say, hello, how is your baby doing? And that really just starts a conversation, and it may just be 5-10 minutes a day that you're giving yourself out of your room, chatting with some other patients or other families. So that's one thing I would say about having the individual rooms is wonderful, but it also gives you that ability to stay in that room and never come out.
I did that. I'll be that person. I did that. I was like, I'm not coming out of this room.
Yeah.
I just I would be head down.
Yeah.
If I walked out to the restroom.
Yeah.
But then my mom, which she was with me a lot, that dad I mentioned, we were being discharged and he was walking in and he was like, hey, grandma. And she was like, it was weird because someone, but you've never been like, hey, I'm Sarah,
Right.
So it's like, it was this thing. And he was like, everything okay?
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, we're getting discharged. And he was like, that's great. But you could see it like
that hurt.
That he wanted to be discharged.
Yeah.
And
wanted his baby well enough.
Right. And it's like you had been on this journey together with them,
Yeah.
but you've never, it was just this very weird, I was wanting to cry for him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's just hard to explain that to someone, unless you've been in it.
Right.
Because it's just like, I don't know. Part of me was like, I should have never seen the nurses run all the time to that. Part of me is like, I shouldn't have seen that for him or for me.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of where you are. But that's also
sometimes
you can't help it. But it's also the benefit of a community. So he don't have to explain anything to us.
Right. No explanation. Or, we'll have parents come and there might be a mom that never talks.
Yeah.
But she comes to every class because she just needs to hear that other people are going through what she's going through.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps her feel more normal.
100%.
And she may never talk and no one's going to make her,
Just show up.
Just show up, to be there, to give yourself that space to just relax for a minute. And this is normal. And, we talk about postpartum depression and anxiety. That's a real thing that happens whether your baby's in the NICU or not.
Correct.
But you're adding on top of that
Such a high level trauma
of the NICU. And I say trauma, and I think that calling it trauma really helps parents.
It is not normal or expected for your child to be in essentially ICU.
Right.
And you, no matter what they're there for,
Right.
that baby's supposed to be with you, on you, leaving with you.
Correct.
Right.
So the loss of that experience.
Right.
It's a grief.
Yeah. And it's traumatic. And you see things you just should not see. You feel things you should not feel as a mom.
Right. And for our parents that have premature babies, for a lot of them, the very premature, there's a whole week at the beginning of their life where they don't even get to hold
What is
their
it called?
baby.
The golden
Week.
And I remember walking through and seeing those signs.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked our nurse, which I will say NICU nurses are godsend.
For sure.
They're godsend.
100%.
You have to have a special calling to be.
Oh my God.
Yes.
They were just.
They are incredible people.
I mean, as are you. I mean, my gosh. They're the people who are in the NICU.
Yeah.
Godsend here. But I remember asking, I said, what's going on? And she's like, they can only touch at like certain times. Like it's like coordinated care, right?
Yeah, they call it cluster care. So anything that has to happen with that baby that day, they try to do it within the same time, as long as it's not going to be too lengthy, or they may space it out, but they just try to cluster any touching. And it's all related to the development in their brain and keeping their heads stable, because when you're premature, there's a higher risk of brain bleeds. So the more we can keep them still and not moving, then the more likely they are to have everything kind of, I'm not medical, but to just have everything kind of close up like it needs to and develop like it needs to. We try to keep them as still as we can.
Now, how early of a preemie are we talking? Are we talking even something like a 35, 36 week baby? Are we talking more of like our 24, 25 to 27 weekers?
What's that? You guys just did like a 20, it was really, really young. 20.
So the earliest we will take 22 weeks.
Yeah.
That's incredible, because when I did medical social worker, 24 was your point of viability. Mm-hmm. Even when I was pregnant with my youngest just 3 years ago, 24 weeks was the point of viability.
Yeah.
I remember that changed, I think right around when I had Will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the physicians told me, he was like, we just started, it was 23, and he was like, I think we're going to go to 22.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
That's a big deal.
And I think that a lot of that goes to the Golden Week protocols and learning, studying that we keep them still as possible, low light, low stimulation, that it gives their bodies time to adjust to being out of the womb, and that gives us better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So those moms are going to be in the NICU for months.
And we have babies that are in the NICU for their first birthday.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of things that, can go into that. It's not necessarily just the 22 weekers that are there for that. It just depends on, what happens and how their bodies develop. But to talk about the Golden Week protocol, I believe it's 28 weeks or younger.
Okay.
They will be on the Golden Week protocol.
And that's
hard. So if a mama delivers at 32, 33 weeks, they may not have all of those restrictions.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. If you're 28 weeks or more, then you won't have that protocol. And it really just depends on your baby.
Mm-hmm. That's
sometimes babies will need to be on the ventilator, but that doesn't mean you can't hold your baby.
I think that's important to touch on is like holding your baby. And I think that scared me. Will was never on a ventilator. He was just on a little face mask. But I was scared to death to hold him.
Yeah. All the cords. It's
all the
so
things.
Intimidating.
It is.
It's so intimidating. And I think that you're already in an environment you're not comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to decide, okay, what can I do versus what am I not allowed to do? And of course, your bedside nurse will kind of tell you what they're comfortable with you doing, what they're not comfortable with you doing. But a lot of times there is this idea that you can't touch your baby. You can't.
I thought that. I mean, my husband, who's a physician, he saw Will for the first time, and I think they said, "Hey, Dad, you want to hold him?" And he goes, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
And he was like, Will just fit in like his hand.
Yeah.
And he was just like, but because the nurses are so good at like just here you go, and you're just like,
Yeah.
They're not the least bit scared.
They're not scared. No.
But they know what they're doing. They're so used to it.
And I was like, please don't leave me. Stay right here for the first, please don't move. Please, please.
No, I need you.
I need you right here. But then I thought, that's just like not like that loss of like, that's not what you're supposed to do with your baby.
Right. You're not supposed to have to deal with being afraid of touching your baby. So that's what I love about our hospital is that skin to skin. If you're skin to skin, some people call it kangaroo care. The benefits of skin to skin for moms and dads are huge. That is not something that people talk about a lot because if you have a full-term baby, you may or may not ever do skin to skin.
Right.
It is great for full-term babies, by the way. It's
not
just
absolutely
for preemies.
Right.
But it has some significant benefits for preemies and for their parents doing skin to skin. And like for dad's example, if we can get a dad to be okay with letting us put the baby on their chest, that is when they become more comfortable. They get used to the weight of the baby. They get used to the feel of their baby, because preemie babies feel different.
They do.
Their skin feels different. It looks different. And of course, they are tiny, so they weigh hardly nothing.
The skin looks like transparent almost.
Almost, yeah.
And that's what's hard, because I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
No one prepped
me for that. No one told me. And that's something I love that you're doing is like, if you know baby's going to be in the NICU, prepping as much as you can for these moms, because just like if you go in for a prep for a surgery, right? Yeah. Like you need to know what that's going to be like and the outcomes. And because, I was like, oh my gosh, why does his skin look like this? And like, it was just like hangy. The skin was like hangy. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It takes them a while to fill that.
Because he didn't have no fat.
Sometimes.
He didn't have no fat.
And their little faces are kind of caved in. You know, they don't get those little chubby cheeks until they get bigger.
They're not as filled out.
Right. And that makes them look very fragile.
You're scared.
Yeah, you are. And as a parent too, like you don't always know what to ask.
No.
So that's another reason that we try to just give as much information as possible, because you don't always know what to ask.
No. It's intimidating.
Yes. And when you're in the medical field, doctors don't always know what to they're not going to tell you all the little details.
No, they're not.
They're coming in and hitting the high points. Like they're talking about the most important parts.
They are.
And sometimes they're talking in their medical lingo.
Big words, fast.
But one thing I want parents to hear that are listening to the podcast is it is completely okay to ask a doctor to restate something, explain something a little more. Please, please, please. It is your right and responsibility as that baby's parent to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Please don't feel intimidated to ask a doctor to explain something further, because you need to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Not only for your own anxiety, but just because you need to understand. Even though these are baby doctors and they know exactly what they're doing, as a parent, you're still going to advocate for your baby
100%
in the hospital. Yes. And so having a good understanding of what's going on with them is going to help you know how to advocate better. And I will say this too, for parents, and we tell them all the time, you know your baby better than we do. It doesn't matter that they've been in this hospital since the day they were born. You are at the bedside. You know your baby. And so if you see something that doesn't seem right, speak up. Tell someone. If you don't feel like you're being heard, go to the next person. Find a social worker in the hospital. Find a nurse manager or assistant nurse manager or, the PCT, somebody to say, hey, this doesn't, I'm
Something
not feeling
seems
right
off.
about this. Trust your mama and daddy gut and speak up, because it may just be that things need to be explained better.
Or it could be something.
Or it could be something that maybe we're missing. And I have for sure seen situations where parents have said, I think something's not right, whatever it be. Maybe the way that they're breathing, I think there might be an issue, or the way that they're feeding and they're spitting up at certain times. These are just examples. Something's not right. But on paper, everything looks fine.
But something is just not right.
And I've had nurses be the advocates for their moms and say, hey, mom's saying that she's not sure about this. Maybe we should look at it further. And when we do, we find something that we didn't realize was 100%. There. And so, thankfully that, most of our doctors want to partner with the parents. They realize that the care of your baby is not just the doctors and the nurses. It is all of you.
It's a team effort.
100%.
I know what I personally did as some tips that helped me was I kept a notebook.
Yes.
I kept a notebook and I would write down who our team was, who our doctor was, who the nurses was. And I almost did it like a day journal. And I'd be like, okay, Jody came by, talked to her. Whitney came by, talked to her. We went down to this level of oxygen. Whatever. That helped me feel in control. And then anybody that came into the room, I would say, hi, I'm Sarah Will's mom. And I'd want them to introduce themselves to me.
Correct.
Because that really irritated me if you just came in and out and didn't acknowledge me.
And I'm not going to lie, that's a problem that we see. And any time that I talk with graduate parents from the NICU, because that's one thing I try to do is stay regularly connected with parents that have now left the NICU and to get their feedback, because that's sometimes you don't process everything till you leave.
Yes,
so
it hits you.
You're living in fight or flight in the NICU.
Sure,
it really hits you, and you're just, well, you also feel like it's weird, even though I'm a nurse. Like, I had a physician do this with Will, come in, start just evaluating Will. Didn't speak to me.
Nope.
Was fixing to leave, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I don't think that physician was malintent.
No.
Right.
Just in, out, and like they get an almost like automatic.
They do.
And they're just like, okay, I'm going to assess this child, and I'm going to go this child, and it's status quo to them
They
when
get
it's
task
life changing to you.
Right.
So, and they were like, oh, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, we're not doing that again.
Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with stating that to your physician and say, I'd like for you to talk to me for a minute. Because they can do rounds in the morning, and sometimes they don't even step into the room.
Oh,
they
now
talk outside of the room.
And that I did not understand.
Yeah.
And
Something we're trying to change, but it's definitely a practice that happens. And
I didn't like it because it felt like I was in this little room and they were talking about me and I couldn't hear it.
Correct. Yeah.
Which it was, and I was like, hey, somebody come in here. Give me something.
Right.
And I'm like, my husband's like, they probably just think you're crazy. I'm like, I don't care. Let them think I'm crazy. Let them think.
Yeah.
This is my baby.
This is my baby.
Talk to me. Yeah.
Correct.
And then asking what you can do, like Google it or ask and say, ask your nurse, hey, they said my child may have this going on. Learn about it.
Right.
Ask for resources.
And I think keeping the notebook is number one.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing you can do for sure, is to just for your own sanity, remember who you've talked to. Because if your baby has multiple things going on, you may have different specialties coming in. But those doctors aren't going to come in every time and say, I'm Dr. So-and-so with pulmonology.
No.
I mean, they may just, like you said, come in and start talking.
And they assume you realize, hey, that's Whitney from pulmonology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, I haven't slept.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah.
I don't remember your name. I don't know what you're here for.
Information overload too, because you are seeing so many nurses. You are seeing so many different specialties of doctors. You might be seeing a lactation nurse as well, trying to figure out all of that and recovering from delivery.
Right.
And they
It
have
is a
shifts.
lot to process.
These people have shifts too. And like if
Yeah.
you are there for months, residents or fellows, they rotate
Yes.
every month. So you could you could literally have new people and you're like, I'm not going crazy. These are just new people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think that the notebook is so important. Not so much to remember the people, but to remember what's being
Said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the people will change, especially like
Yeah.
in our hospital as a teaching hospital. So like you said, residents are going to be rotating.
Yeah.
Different residents are going to come back at any point in the day and update you on certain things. So focus on the information that they're giving and not so much who you're talking to. And that's hard because you get different personalities.
And some you're going to clash with and some you're going to love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of the notebook because let's say you do get a new resident or fellow in there and they're kind of looking at them and you say, well, let me tell you the history. And you've got your notebook there of saying, well, 2 weeks ago we had this respiratory issue come up.
Right.
Or we had this GI issue occur or whatever the case is. And you can give them that snapshot real fast, much faster than really they can find it in the chart.
Because they're starting at scratch. I mean,
are.
they're starting from a chart, right? And you know your child.
Yep.
You having your child's history, just like we should all know our own medical history to advocate for ourselves. Like that's a power move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you get control.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Controlling as best you can.
As much.
Controlling the controllable.
And I loved how you say get outside because that was something I had to do. I was forced.
You do have to. You have to. That's the part of caring for yourself.
Yeah.
Nobody is meant to be in a little room with the lights dimmed 24/7.
No.
We've got to get out. You've got to, have a routine. That's a big part.
Yeah.
Have a routine that every day I'm going to get up, I'm going to take a quick shower or at least fix my hair because we all know mamas don't shower every day.
No.
You don't have to shower every day.
No, we don't. We don't wash our hairs either day. Yeah.
We do not wash
My
our
We're good.
2-year-old would not let me shower this morning, so
Yeah.
I feel that in my soul.
Well, you look a lot better than if I wasn't able to shower. I was going to say that right now.
Lots of concealer and dry shampoo today.
I thought that too. Yay for dry shampoo.
Yeah.
That's
can-
what she should deserve a
Nobel Prize
Nobel
Yes.
Prize.
from us
Exactly.
mamas.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So having a routine is important, making sure that you're eating regularly and drinking regularly. So you may drink and you may have healthy habits at home, but when you're away from home, you find yourself having the not so healthy habits because
100%
vending machine is easier, or cafeteria, or you're stressed and you're tired, so you're drinking more caffeine. Be aware of that and give yourself a good balance of some healthy foods and drinks, and then also let yourself have a Mountain Dew is my jam. So let yourself have a Mountain Dew, or let yourself have some chicken fingers. But also remember what you're putting in your body, because that is going to affect how you feel physically and mentally.
Mentally is a huge thing. It's a challenge.
Oh yeah.
So we're telling you, keep your notebook. We're telling you, take that break. We're telling you, your support system that you're used to, they may not say the things that you need to hear, and it's not their fault. It's not your fault.
Right.
Find the people who's been there in that.
Yeah. Right.
Or I love Whitney's go to voice journaling.
Yep.
Let it out. So then when you do have to talk to someone, because they're going to ask, right? That's just what people are going to, hey, how's the baby? What's going on? And you are like, you want to like scream about it, or you're like, it's been a really tough day. You want to have already kind of let that version of your experience reaction out and to say, we had a rough day.
Yeah.
Say,
we didn't get the news
we didn't get the news we wanted. Discharge delayed. Or you just had because these moms, you got them maternity leave, right? If they get it.
Right.
Correct.
And they go back to work, or they can't go, whatever. If they get it, and that's the toughest thing for people to be like, they kind of get lost in, I'm in the NICU, but I'm not home with my baby when my baby's home, because now it's just that hard balance, and people don't understand that.
Correct.
And also, a lot of our families have other children.
So it's like, what do you do? You go back.
You've got to be there for your other kids. You cannot be in the NICU 24/7 with your baby, and that is okay.
That needs to be said.
You're not a bad parent.
You are not a bad parent. You have the ability to call and check on your baby regularly. You're not getting on the nurse's nerves by calling and checking in. But we have parents that have to go back to work. We have moms that choose to go back to work to save their maternity leave.
To be home when the baby's home.
Baby comes home. And that is okay too. And I think that if you have the opportunity to be there every day, that's wonderful. But if you have to just come and visit in the evenings or on the weekends, make your time there more about bonding with your baby than anything else.
Right.
Do your skin to skin. I always suggest having books that you can read to your baby.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be nursery rhyme books and little, board books are great. It can be a book you like. But reading to your baby, there have been studies that have shown the benefits of early literacy in the NICU.
Wow.
And so we encourage our parents to sit beside their isolette, read to their baby, sing to their baby. That is so, so important. And that is something that you can do for your baby's development.
I love that.
Is to do that. And so make that part of your daily routine. Yeah. Maybe you have a nighttime book that you read and already start a nighttime routine with your baby. It can feel like everything you dreamt was going to be, but when you were going to have your baby has been taken away when you get to the NICU.
100%.
But it doesn't have to be that way completely, because you can start special moments with your baby every day and routines with your baby every day that you continue when you get home. And so the best that you can, try to think about those things. Your baby needs to hear your voice. Absolutely. They need to smell you. They need to feel your skin. But if you only come and do that on the weekend, that is wonderful still.
Yeah. You're still doing it.
What you need to do. You're being a mama and daddy at home with your other kids.
Because life doesn't stop for it.
You're being a mama and daddy in the NICU on the weekends when you can be there. So, it doesn't make you any less of a parent if you're not there every single day, but make that time count.
I love that.
For sure. Put your phone down. That's a big thing.
Don't.
And
you don't have to video everybody and say, let's look at the baby. Like, that can be your time. Like, that is okay. You can take some pictures and text it out and say, you know what? My time is with them in the NICU. And as much as you want to see it, we're not video chatting every 5 minutes.
We can't.
That's okay. That's a healthy boundary.
Yes, boundaries. I do have a question. Important. I had a weird idea pop up because that's how I operate. That's what I do. So could someone potentially with like an old iPhone, iPad, whatever, do good morning routines or bedtime routines and voice record it and a nurse play it for the baby?
Yeah, they could. That would be great.
You know, if a parent isn't able to get up there during the week and only can do the weekends, is that a way that the baby could still hear parents' voices on a consistent, more daily basis?
So that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. So it's actually become a point of care in most hospitals to have iPads available for parents to FaceTime with their baby in the NICU.
Oh, good.
So, or I don't know whatever they use, Zoom, different ways like that. So if you're not able to be with your baby, your bedside nurse will have access to an iPad where you can see them, you can talk to them, they can hear you. And so we definitely have parents that every night they call and them and the siblings read a night.
I love that with the siblings.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And that's I would like to add that too. When you have other kids and your baby's in the NICU, make them as much a part of it as you can.
Yeah.
You know, for most hospitals, there's a period of time where maybe siblings can't come on the unit.
I was thinking
flu season.
Yeah.
You can bring your child to the NICU now with you to see the baby. But even if you couldn't because of school or travel or whatever, let them call and talk to the baby. And, you know, if they can read, let them read a story to the baby. Something like that is really good. But yeah, you could definitely record something that you ask the nurse to play at night. And, you know, if you get to know your nurses and connect with them, a lot of times our nurses have families' phone numbers and they exchange. I'm not saying that all would, but you can
you form really personal relationships with these nurses. And on the nurse's point, you can say, I care for this person to be my child's primary nurse. That's a request you can make. They can see if they can accommodate it. Some you ain't gonna mess with. And you can say, I really would prefer them not to be in rotation if that's possible. That's okay too. It's okay if you don't like the way a provider does something to say, I would like to get a second opinion.
Definitely.
Like you still have no limitations, but you feel like you're so limited and helpless. But you're not.
If you have ever had any loved one in the hospital at any time, you have learned that we have to advocate for ourselves in the medical world. And that's not to say anything negative about
it's just
the
reality.
medical profession. It's just reality. And so you are always going to be the one. You are one person to hundreds of patients that they see, but that's the only doctor you're talking to. So for you, like that person's real important to you because this is the only doctor I'm seeing. And I need you to hear me and what my concerns are. And so just remember that you have to advocate for yourself and for your patient. If that's your baby, if that's your husband, if that's your, you know, whoever, your loved one. So
I love that. I know our hospital is very blessed to have you and have this program. And our goal is just so if these mommies or if you're in the NICU and you don't have, and some of these things we've talked about, the NICU you work at is, you know, I forget what level it is, but it's like one of the high
level 4.
Level 4. So it is a lot of sick babies get flown in. It's kind of just the place in Alabama that the NICU is. So if you're in a smaller NICU like this, you may not have
as many
resources, but you will always still be able to keep your notepad, take your breaks, advocate, research, form those relationships with who the care team is.
Give yourself special time with your baby, skin to skin time that's just you and your baby, because sometimes you can get so caught up in knowing all the medical and figuring out what needs to happen that you forget to just still find time to enjoy your baby.
And that was something someone had to say to me because I was very like, okay, if he weans off this oxygen, we can do this, we can get home. They're like, pause. And so there was this study, it's somewhere in, I forget, Africa maybe, that there's this tribe and how they've had these great outcomes with these preemie babies. These mommies just take them and literally skin to skin. The baby stays on her chest, like wraps it, stays, and like they are having great outcomes in like 20 something weekers. And it's just sold to kangaroo care. So I found that. And so that, to my mind, I was like, that is, I was like, oxygen, brain development, heart.
Everything.
And I was like, wow, this is so instinctual, like to have your baby, but it literally was changing how he was growing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. God made our bodies to have babies and to also take care of those babies. 100%.
That was a big moment for me. I was like, that's all you need, Sarah. It's like literally hold him.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying medicines and all that doesn't have a place, but I'm just saying like that was something I could do to change something to me.
And for preemie moms, pumping is another big thing.
Yes.
You will find it will become a source of as a source of necessity. Your baby needs that milk, but it also can be a big source of mental stress on you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it definitely impacted me negatively.
Yeah.
Mentally.
And so finding that routine, like we talked about, is a really big thing. But also doing skin to skin helps to produce milk better.
It does.
If you're struggling with getting your milk to come in or to get a good milk supply, you talk with your lactation specialist. But doing skin to skin also helps with that. And it helps your baby get comfortable with the potential to breastfeed one day if that's what you choose to do. And we talk about that a lot. I think for moms, they feel like all I can do is try to produce milk, which is not true. We've talked about all the other things you can do. But
there is a lot of pressure on it.
Find connection with each other because it is hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding, pumping is hard in general. And then you add on that your baby's in the NICU. So you're not always getting to just put your baby to breast.
And your baby can be super early and your body ain't even ready to make milk yet. Or you can have trauma, surgery. It's like me, that my body was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You're not doing that right now.
Not doing
We have to heal before
you almost died.
Yeah.
We're not worried about lactating right now. That was what my body was saying, and no one said that to me. But I will say what I did, which is great, is I took advantage of the hospital resources. So I got to use the hospital grade pump.
Yes, that's every bedside.
Big deal.
So get that and say, hey, like I asked, anything I was concerned about, they brought a resource into me. But you just have to ask and say, well, I'm here.
Yeah. You have to ask.
And I mean, that's just if we all had surgery, went in a random hospital, and we're like, okay, we have X, Y, and Z we need to take care of too. Get it done while you're in the hospital.
Yeah.
Make it work for you.
And every hospital has lactation specialists. I call those ladies every day. Yes. Because I struggled. My body, I had medical issues. My body did not want to bring in any milk. My son spent a couple of nights in the NICU. And, of course, we got to go home when I got home. So I cannot say that I have been through what so many of our other parents have. But my body did not want to produce milk. And so I called them all the time.
And that's okay.
They were wonderful. They helped me. They encouraged me. But they also realistically helped me say, okay, your body might not do it.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
And you're not a failure.
Because we come from a country that has wonderful formula that can help your baby. Your baby will still be fed.
Yes. Your baby is fine to this day.
And hear me say this, mamas out there in the NICU trying to pump. If you're not able to get as much milk as your baby needs, your baby will still be fed.
100%.
They will still be taken care of. Yes. They will still have wonderful outcomes. Please don't hear anyone say that the only way your baby's going to thrive is just from breast milk.
No,
breast milk is wonderful and gives lots of great things to your baby, but it is not the end all be all in the medical world because thankfully we do live in a country that has
formula and donor breast milk and all of those things.
Yes, ask about donor breast milk if that's important to you.
Yes,
or just
donor
use your resources. Don't feel like that's like, I'm glad you said that. It's not the end all to be all.
It is not.
For your baby, your physical, your mental health, your physical health, like it is not worth it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. And I don't know if I read the same article that you did or if this was a different one, but I know that there are in certain countries, they don't have isolettes.
Yeah.
And so the mom is in a hospital bed with their baby on top of them 24/7 while they're being cared for in the NICU setting because there's not isolettes and they are the isolette.
This was, I mean, it was just like, because I thought about that. I'm like, what do these third world countries do? Like, let's go back to what these women are doing that's working.
Yeah. I know. And isn't it funny how there's become this culture of if you hold your baby too much, you're spoiling them? It's like, who came up with that?
Aunt Brenda.
Aunt Brenda did. Aunt Brenda is our Karen, so we don't talk to her.
Probably had lots of children and was overwhelmed and stressed and probably had mental health that hadn't been addressed. So she's like, I can't touch you anymore. I cannot be touched. Which I get that too. I get out touched.
We all do. We all do that.
Fair.
But you're not going to spoil your NICU baby
by
holding them too
much. You're not going to spoil a baby at all by holding them too much.
Hold your baby. Do skin to skin. do skin to skin. That's all I can say.
We love that.
If you take anything away from this episode,
skin to skin. We love that.
Skin to skin, and give yourself special time with your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And just give yourself a break.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You did nothing to cause this.
You're not a bad parent.
Not a failure.
Absolutely not.
And you will take it day by day.
Right.
Hour by hour.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do not compare to the people across the hall.
No, or someone you see on Instagram that's like did the NICU experience, or I think it's hard, especially like twins, triplets, quadruplets, all those. You look at those moms on Instagram or health challenge moms, right? Like that's the medical mamas that they post about it and they're saying this, and it's easy because you want to feel seen and got, but their journey's their journey. Your journey's yours.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not always going to align.
Every baby is different.
Yep.
So we can have moms that both deliver, 28-week babies.
Yeah.
And one could go home on oxygen for a while and need a feeding tube, and one could go home and not have to have any of that. And that doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong, or, that is just every baby's journey is different. And so try not to compare, but just know that regardless of how it looks, your community is going to be found in other parents that are going through that same thing. And another thing I will share is there are good Facebook groups out there. There's one for Alabama that's Preemie Love of Alabama.
Okay.
And that's a wonderful group to connect with other parents who have had babies in the hospital. So find those types of groups especially if you're in a smaller hospital that maybe doesn't have, classes and things like that. Forums like that. The March of Dimes has an app. It's called Compass. And it's a great resource that actually has like a breastfeeding tracker. You can time how long you pump, how long you breastfeed. Yeah, that's really cool.
And March of Dimes is just great to plug in anyways. And
it is.
Find it in your state. We're local here, so we're great to have y'all just here, but
absolutely
statewide. Go to your guys' walks are great ways to meet fellow moms.
Yeah, that's a great way to get connected and meet people. And they have Facebook pages. Every state, March of Dimes has a Facebook page. They have a place where you can share your story and you can read other families' stories.
Oh, I like that.
So that's a really great place to just be encouraged and see that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
No,
you always you've got us. Turn us on every week. Listen to us, and we'll give you the things.
That's right.
We always ask our guests before they leave. You can answer this however you wish. What is one thing you wish you would have known about motherhood before you're a mom? I know.
Quite the loaded question.
It's a loaded question, and we have got all sorts of answers before.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no right or wrong.
No, I know my answer, because I've said it several times today, and it came from a personal place.
Yeah.
Enjoy your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get bogged down in doing all the right things and making sure don't drive yourself crazy trying to pump and feed and bedtimes and routines. And all of those things are great and wonderful and important for your baby. But if it's taking away the joy that you have when you're spending time with your baby,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So when you're with your baby, make it about you and that baby. We have parents with twins. This has been the month of triplets.
Oh, wow.
Really?
In our hospital, for sure. We've
had God bless those parents.
Several sets of quads this week. We are seeing lots of multiples. But
I have to breathe through that. I got a little anxious just thinking about that.
God bless those mamas.
These are wonderful mamas and daddies coming in with these babies, though. And they are completely rocking it. But you give yourself special time with each of those babies.
Yes.
You're made to do it.
Yeah.
You're made to do it. So remind yourself of that when it gets really hard. I had to tell myself, I was made to do this. Yeah. I know it feels overwhelming right now.
And you were made for your son, and he was made for you.
Right. And so
I love that.
Trust that.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay, guys.
That's great.
Till next time.
That's right.
All right. Maternal mental health is as important as physical health. The Previa Alliance podcast was created for and by moms dealing with postpartum depression in all its variables, like anxiety, anger, and even apathy. Hosted by CEO, founder Sarah Parkhurst and licensed clinical social worker Whitney Gay, each episode focuses on specific issues relevant to pregnancy and postpartum. Join us and hear how other moms have overcome mental health challenges, as well as access tips and suggestions on dealing with your own challenges as moms. You can also browse our podcast library and listen to previous episodes at any time. Please know you're not alone on this journey. We're here to help.